What defines strength in the Resident Evil series? Well, most of the time, strength in this game can be defined as firepower. The more firepower you have, then the more powerful you are. And yet, in Resident Evil's newest game, firepower is one thing that the female lead character, Grace Ashcroft, is lacking. In that case, what defines her strength? Grace Ashcroft presents us with something new in the whole Resident Evil universe, particularly when it comes to a female lead character. Before her appearance, we already had characters such as Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield, Sheva Alomar, and many more, who are presented as strong women capable of fighting back their enemies by utilizing their physical and combat strength, combined with devastating firepower. A few female leads were also presented as clumsy, as they serve as part of the game's dynamic, such as Ashley Graham and Moira Burton, though the latter eventually turns into quite a badass character later on. Grace, however, is built different. Throughout the game, she does not rely on devastating firepower, nor does she rely on her combat strength, as she lacks both. For most of the game, she carries nothing but a handgun as her firearm. She does receive a Requiem hand cannon from Leon Kennedy, but with the scarcity of its ammo, one could arguably say that the weapon might as well be treated as collectible rather than an actual weapon. In essence, while most other characters are shown to be badasses, Grace is a rather clumsy character who can only do so little against her enemies. And in that case, how come she is the best female lead in the whole Resident Evil series? That's what we're going into today, so let's dive in. When it comes to female lead characters, the Resident Evil series initially tends to present them as capable, independent, and, more importantly, combat ready. When the first Resident Evil game was released, the female lead character was Jill Valentine, who was a member of a special force within the Raccoon City Police Department. Being part of a special force and all, Jill was presented as combat ready, extremely skilled with various arms, and somehow even overpowered. Carrying a wide arsenal, she takes on many enemies with her weapons, even those with monstrous strength and size. And thus, her gameplay can be somewhat described as weapon-heavy, as she relies on various weaponry to defeat her enemies. Things stay the same with Resident Evil 2, with Claire Redfield following a similar archetype. The younger sister of Chris Redfield, who is the male lead of the previous game, Claire is mentioned to have learned various weapon skills from her brother, thus making her combat ready as well, even as a civilian. Resident Evil 3, 5, 6, and 7 follow the same archetype, with characters like Sheva Alomar, Sherry Birkin, Helena Harper, and Mia Winters being powerful, combat ready, and relying on devastating firepower to progress through the game. It is Resident Evil 4 that is built a bit differently. The female lead in the game, Ashley Graham, is presented as powerless. She does not carry any weapon and she needs to be protected most of the time. She has her own short segment, in which she relies on escaping enemies rather than eliminating them. Still, Ashley's archetype, in my opinion, was designed that way to serve as a plot dynamic within the game itself, as Leon's gameplay in the game focuses on rescuing her from all threats. In short, the archetypes of female leads in the series tend to fall into two extremes. Characters who are extremely skilled with weapons and rely heavily on firepower to defeat their enemies, or characters who are portrayed as extremely clumsy, to the point where their partner needs to carry them most of the time. With these two opposing archetypes, there is barely any space in between for a character who isn't overpowered, but also isn't helpless. Well, not until Grace Ashcroft comes in. I was quite hyped when this character was introduced back in 2025, mainly because of her connection with one character from the Resident Evil Outbreak series, Alyssa Ashcroft. Later on, I became even more interested in her when the developers stated, sometime before the game's release date, that Grace's gameplay would focus on how to utilize the environment within the game to survive. and that her gameplay would rely more on avoiding enemies rather than eliminating them. Grace Ashcroft is an FBI crime analyst based somewhere in the Midwestern United States. She's a bit timid in nature, and this can be seen multiple times, especially in her stuttering way of speaking. One day, she was sent by her superior to investigate a crime at Wrenwood Hotel, which is the very place that gave her emotional trauma, as she witnessed her own mother being murdered there. Despite that trauma, she accepted the mission hesitantly, even when her superior told her that he would not force her to go. To me, it appears that Grace forced herself to take the mission in order to confront her past. I personally see it as her way of settling everything that has been haunting her once and for all. She is thrown into horror after being abducted during her investigation. Throughout the game, she is not given any firearms aside from a handgun and a somewhat useless requiem. Still, she has to encounter many enemies along the way, and without any adequate firepower or combat skills, all she has to rely on is her, or rather, the player's wits. And wits become the central theme of her gameplay. There aren't enough bullets for both the handgun and the Requiem hand cannon she carries. The enemies are far stronger than her firepower, and there are simply too many to face directly. However, even with these disadvantages, Grace can utilize many things in her surroundings to survive and work things out. She is able to craft healing materials, ammo, and, more importantly, she can use her environment to distract and defeat enemies. One example is that an empty bottle can be useful to her, serving as a way to distract enemies. By throwing the bottle in a certain direction, Grace is able to lure enemies away and quietly move to safety. In fact, it's not just limited to bottles. Light switches and kitchen carts can also be used for this purpose. To sum it up, combat is not Grace Ashcroft's strength at all. She is vulnerable at every moment and thus helps create the tension and horror in her gameplay. Playing as Grace Ashcroft feels like playing a survivor in the Dead by Daylight series, minus the trolling moments. Still, with that vulnerability comes creativity. Players can experience creative freedom in dealing with enemies, whether it is fight or flight. And yet, despite all those vulnerabilities, Grace must overcome everything by herself most of the time. She does receive assistance from Leon Kennedy, who is the stronger main character, but that only happens during brief moments, such as the helicopter crash, during Emily's transformation into a bow, as well as the ending where she collapses after being struck by Victor. Aside from those moments, she has to survive her ordeal alone, and she does so resiliently. This, of course, is quite a contrast to other female lead characters in most, if not all, of the Resident Evil series. While characters like Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield, or Sheva Alomar focus on eliminating threats using combat prowess, Grace's gameplay centers on enduring and outmaneuvering them as much as possible. And in my opinion, this makes Grace feel more realistic in nature, as what she experiences might also be experienced by any of us. I already mentioned previously that Grace Ashcroft had to deal with her emotional trauma as she was sent to investigate a crime at Wrenwood Hotel, which is the very same hotel where she witnessed her mother's death. To me, this shows that Grace is a courageous and resilient character, one who is brave enough to face her haunting past head-on. This sentiment is also echoed during her gameplay. By any means, Grace is not ready to talk your BOW, terror, and yet she courageously continues to deal with the horror, even when she is extremely vulnerable. Like I mentioned before, she has nothing but a handgun with her and needs to rely on her wits to survive. This, of course, feels different from other female characters who are archetyped as combat-ready badasses that can wreck every BOW they encounter, carrying enough firepower to tear down a house. With that level of strength, zombies feel less threatening and more like target practice. Arguably, a player who plays as these characters could say that zombies are not even terrifying at all. As Grace, however, even a zombie becomes a problem. A licker that she encounters later in the game might mean that a terrifying chase is about to begin. Yet, the outcome is still the same. Grace, just like the other female characters, survives the whole ordeal. The difference is how she does it. While other characters survive by relying on bullets, facing BOWS without fear as long as they have a shotgun in hand, Grace's gameplay remains tense and frightening even when facing a single zombie. This shows that strength in this game does not only mean having overwhelming firepower or combat prowess. Resilience, bravery, and strong wits can also define strength. And Grace, to me, feels more real, because she struggles desperately. Her resilience feels rooted in desperation rather than power. And yet, despite the hopelessness of her situation, she is still able to manage things in her own way. She is not courageous because she lacks fear, no. She is courageous because she experiences fear, again and again, and still chooses to act despite it. This can be seen clearly in her gameplay. Her aim is initially shaky, and she shows signs of panic early on. Yet, when it comes to what she has to do, she does it without hesitation. This can be seen when she has to carry Emily to solve the door mechanism, when she protects Emily from invading zombies, and later on, when she shows no hesitation in harming herself after seeing Leon Kennedy being threatened. For someone who clearly feels fear, Grace handles it remarkably well, and that, I think, is what makes her unique, admirable even. So, to conclude everything, what makes Grace Ashcroft feel like the best female lead, to me, is not her combat prowess, or how powerful she is, but instead, it's how human she is. She is not as proficient as others in combat, nor does she become so helpless that she needs to be carried by others again and again. Grace is Grace. Powerless, but not helpless. She is not the type of female lead who appears and kills every zombie using a full arsenal at hand. Grace is very vulnerable, even to the weakest enemy, and we can see and feel her fear. And yet, despite all of that, she still moves forward. To me, that is what makes her so admirable. She redefines what strength is in this game, that it isn't just firepower but also courage, resilience, wit, and the unwillingness to give up. She isn't fearless like many other female leads are portrayed. Instead, she chooses to act despite fear. That alone is better than being fearless, and perhaps that is what makes Grace so admirable. Uncertain, afraid, timid, yet unwilling to give up and determined to control her fear. That's human, that's all of us. Feel free to add more context if I missed anything. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.